Hey, everybody. This is Mother Teresa here. How's everybody doing? Listen, on tonight, I wanted to just share with you all a little bit about my grandparents. And I know you may say, what is it about your grandparents that you want us to hear? Well, let me just tell you, this is Black History Month, and I just wanted to just honor my grandparents for the amazing work and the amazing lives and the legacy that they left behind for us. You know, as we talk about our grandparents and we talk about the people that have gone on, a lot of times we reflect on their memories quite fondly if they were, if they meant a lot, if they had a special place in your life. I say, most fondly, because sometimes that's not always the case. Some people will talk about their grandparents and it's like, oh my gosh, they were the meanest people ever, or they didn't have a relationship with their grandparents. Well, let me just tell you, mine was just the opposite. And this is just going to be a quick little story. I can recall my grandmother telling me that she married my grandfather when she was only 12 years old. You heard that right. She was only 12 and he was 21. And my grandmother would say, and we called her Big Mama and we called my granddaddy Big Daddy. My big mama would say, when he would go to work and he worked in the woods, hauling what she called puckwood. And she would tell us, she said, when he would go to work hauling puckwood, she would go out in the front yard and she would play in the dirt. If it was raining or if there was water anywhere, she would go and play in the mud puddles. She would still play with dolls. She would do all of those things that a 12-year-old girl would do. And she said, and of course, she didn't know anything about being a wife. She didn't know anything about cooking. She didn't know any of those things. But she soon had to find out because in a couple of years, my grandma had her, or my big mama had her first child. And so all of that playing house and all of that playing with the dolls, now she had a real doll that she had to be responsible for. And my grandparents, they were married unto death. They were married for probably, 60, 65 years or longer, probably longer than that, because they both died when they were well into their 80s. My big daddy may have been 90. But so they were married for all of that length of time, and they had 15 children. Yes, 15. They had 15 children, and most of those children are still alive today, including my mom, who is 81. But let me just tell you some of the things that I can recall as a kid hanging out at my grandparents' house is that their house was very unique. Now, my granddaddy, he built the house that my grandparents lived in. He, along with some other people, they actually built the house. And the house that I knew of, the house that is still standing, was actually their second home. I think their first home burned, and it was a larger house, of course, to house all 15 of those children. But I just look at the house and I think about the house now as an adult compared to when I was much younger. When I was much younger, the house seemed like it was huge. It seems like the porch was 10 feet tall. And of course, I'm exaggerating, but the house seemed really, really large. And of course, the house only had one, two, three bedrooms in the house. But when I was a little kid, that third bedroom was my grandma's canning room. Now, if you all don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about a canning room, basically the room was where my grandparents, of course, I forgot to mention that my grandparents were also farmers. So they had this huge farm on their property, and they would raise all kinds of vegetables. And of course, back in the day, people had hogs and they had chickens and they had cows. They had a horse to help with the plowing. and just all kinds of things like that. I think Big Mama even had rabbits back there. They didn't eat the rabbits. Well, you know what? I don't know if they did or not. But anyway, they had rabbits back there. But the vegetables that came out of Big Mama's garden, she would can those vegetables, and she would put them in her canning room. And of course, you had, the fruit trees and the different things like that. But that room was it seemed like it was huge. Again, it seemed like it was huge, but it was a room that was lined with shelves. And they were the homemade shelves. So they were not your shelves like you would go to IKEA and different places like that to purchase and things, there was nothing fancy about their house at all. So she had these makeshift shelves that Big Daddy had built, and all around that room were her vegetables and her fruits and all of the different things. And let me just tell you, you could go in that room only if Big Mama sent you to go get something out of that room. You didn't just go in that room just to be, looking around and oohing and ahhing and all of that. No, the only reason you were in that room is if she sent you in that room to go get something. And when you went to go and fetch whatever she wanted you to get, you would get it and you would get out of there and you would close that door back. And so that's what they ate. That's a lot of the things that my grandparents ate. And I was telling someone the other day is that whenever we would go to spend the night with my grandparents, and they lived in this little community called Fellowship. What a befitting name for the community that they lived in. But when we would go to Fellowship, and if we, happened to spend the night there, the breakfast was going to always be the same. It was going to consist of rice, homemade biscuits, some of Big Daddy's syrup, and either fried chicken backs or what she called mackerels or Simon croquette. That was the Saturday meal every single Saturday that we spent the night there. And it was probably the same meal that she cooked all the time. Now, and it was so delicious. It was such a simple meal, but it was so delicious. And I can just recall just whenever we would go and spend the weekends there, it would be, a lot of my cousins, we would all come and gather at Fellowship on Saturday after we had, did our chores at our own home. And we would just find ourselves in Fellowship, just spending time with my grandparents, my uncles, my aunties, and my cousins. And of course, we would stay in, if we didn't spend the night, we would stay until it was dark. And let me just tell you, there were no street lights. So when it was dark, it was so dark out there. It was so black outside that you could not even see your hand in front of your face. But you know what you could see? You could look up in the sky and see the stars. Not like today, because I can walk outside. I live in the city, and I'm gonna hardly see any stars up in the sky. But in Fellowship, you could always see the stars in the sky. And let me just tell you, I loved my grandparents. They were the absolute best. And I'm just going to tell you, you don't find grandparents like that anymore. You don't find the grandparents who take the time to pour into their grandchildren's lives and to share the stories and share the things that happen to them or in their lifetime the way that my grandparents did. And I'm so very grateful. I'm so very grateful that I had my grandparents to leave the legacy that they left for us. And I definitely don't know if I would be the person that I am today if it were not for my grandparents who were Odell and Errol Stearns. And, they had a very rich history. And my Big Daddy was, their last name was Stern, and he was a very stern man, but he was such a loving man. And my grandmother, I think, was just Oh my goodness. I can't say enough about my grandmother. She was always so loving and so kind. And of course, a soft-spoken woman. And of course, she may have been very different to her children, but to her grandchildren, she was always that big mama who had time for you. And I can just remember my grandmother died of course, when I was adult, my grandmother and grandfather. So I had them for a long time. Um, and I can just recall some of the times that I would want to go and spend some time with her as an adult. And I wouldn't have time, but I would call her and I would say, Big Mama, I know I need to stop by and visit with you and check on you and Big Daddy. And she would always say, Teresa, you have your family. I understand you work. You have all those things that you need to take care of, and you all go to church a lot. And she would always um, she would always let me know it was okay. She would always make it seem like it was okay. And now I wish that I really would have made the sacrifice and go and at least spend some time, more time with my grandparents as I became an adult. Because we went from being there almost every weekend um, to, just kind of going whenever we had the chance or whenever we had the time or on special occasions. And I think I'm going to leave with this thought in mind. You all that have your grandparents, you have your parents that are still alive, make the time to go and visit them. Make the time to stop by and visit. Spend a little time, even if you're just kind of hanging out, doing nothing but just listening. I really wish that could get that time back with my grandparents, but that time is gone. So now it's left up to me to make sure that I am that grandparent, just like my grandparents modeled for me. So in the spirit of Black History Month, I would just like to salute my grandparents and for a job well done and for a legacy that I hope that lives forever and ever. Y'all have a good night, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.